Let me ask you something. If I was to say deep flavours, subtle sweetness and an incredibly intense crema, how would that sound to you? Well, if it sounds as good to you as it does to me, you're really going to enjoy this coffee review this week with Coffee with GPA. So for this week's coffee review, we're going to be going back to London and we're going to be exploring London grade coffee. Now the three that we have for you this week are the Albion, we have the Token House, and then we finish it off with a dark espresso. Now the great thing about these coffees is that as you go through that range of the three together, they start from sweet, slightly vanilla-y and chocolatey Albion medium roast. As we go to the Token House, we're going to expect flavours to get a bit darker with a bit more bitterness. And then we finally end up with our espresso, and all of a sudden we have this deep, almost Italian feeling type of roasted coffee, which is very, very intense. Exactly what you'd expect if you went to a cafe in Italy. So, London grade coffee went to India because they knew that the Italians actually bought most of their coffee beans from India. So they ventured out towards the southern Indian farming estates and they came across these incredible beans by a farmer who's a second generation passionate coffee grower. Now these particular coffees are going to be all about the sweetness and all about the technical flavours because of the region that they were actually created in. Now when I say created, we know that they're going to be grown in very distinct areas of each of these estates. Now the estate that they've actually been grown on is famous for its silver oak, its mahogany, its rosewood, its cardamom and its orange tree canopies. So what we should get from this is a very, very varied yet very enjoyable, straight to the palate type of feeling. Now when we first look at the packaging for each of these, I actually quite like this. It's very subtle, and when you actually look at things that are subtle, they tend to speak a lot more for the product rather than the packaging. I think this looks really nice. I love the fact they've just popped the logo to the top and the label on the front does exactly what it says on the tin. Right, in terms of the actual bean size, now all of the beans are of a fairly similar type of size and compound. You will just start to notice them get slightly darker as time goes on. Now they're a fairly kind of medium-sized, well-roasted type of bean. And a very, very, I would say a dark chocolate type of finish on the flavour notes when you go straight to the bag. And there's also a very sweet type vanilla smell that you get on the back note there of the Albion itself. Now, the reason I've gone for this one, I guess today, sometimes these coffees, especially if we're going from a light roast to a slightly darker roast, like a medium, certainly as we get towards the dark roast end, we find that the flavours tend to change and they feel a lot more spicy to a degree. Now I'm guessing this is what we're going to get from these beans themselves. I guess the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So let's give these a little try and see what we end up with. Okay, so here's our single shot espresso. Now the first thing that captures my attention is almost the three type of layers that this actually blends into. We start with our velvety, luxurious, deep, rich crema on top, followed by an almost caramel type of, almost semi type of layer underneath it. Then it goes deep into the very, very dark espresso at the very bottom. It looks absolutely fantastic. And the first couple of things that jump out at you actually when you give it that first smell is the kind of rich and spicy type of feel that you would get from a coffee of this type of calibre. Almost reminds me of like an after dinner type of espresso. It smells fantastic, so let's give it a little taste. And certainly the things that are going to jump out at you now really are those very, very subtly sweet flavours, very subtly sweet, but you also get a lot of spice from that as well. It's like a little explosion of spice on the tongue. sort of finished off with a very vanilla-y type of sweetness at the back end of that taste as well. Now for a medium roast, it does taste very dark, but I don't think that's a problem. It kind of takes me back a little bit actually to some of the first coffees that I had growing up. Now again, if you've seen some of my videos before, you know that I've gone into in-depth discussion on how I got into coffee. But one of my biggest memories was sitting there and being able to enjoy a good cafetiere of coffee after school, or if we'd sort of spent the evening at home as a family, there'd always be some sort of coffee involved, and this very much takes me back to that type of time in my life, which is never a problem. It's always a nice thing. And I can imagine actually this would be very, very good as a filter coffee. Certainly in an AeroPress this would also help pronounce those type of flavour notes very, very quickly and very early on. Now we've done this as a fairly fine grind, but that's absolutely great. I think it works for this coffee. It enables it to get all of those slight bitter notes that you will get, and they're actually very complex and very balanced throughout the espresso itself. But also that subtle sweetness just jumps out, almost does it in levels. I think London Grade Coffee have hit the nail on the head with this one. It's a really, really good coffee. Now we've also tried some of the other ones as we've gone along in time, and I think out of the Token House and the Espresso, you can tell the difference between the type of roaster profile that's been used on it. The Token House is that balance between a rich espresso and a really good filter, if you've got that kind of medium ground on it. But very much, if you go down the espresso route, what can you expect? Deep flavours, rich flavours, intense flavours. They're a really good trio of coffees. Now they're actually well priced as well. You can get them from London Grade Coffee for £8 a bag, and Mark has assured me that there isn't many of those left. So if this does sound like the sort of coffee that you're really going to enjoy and really get to grips with, it's worth buying a bag now while you can. LondonGradeCoffee.com. Also, you can buy your bag with a review at coffeewithgpa.com. I hope you've liked these coffees. They really are going to jump out at you as being something that's well worth trying. Certainly if you've never tried this brand before, I think you should give this a shot. Southern India has a lot of very, very good things going for it as far as the beans are concerned, certainly, and I think you're going to enjoy these. So look forward to seeing you again very soon. We've got a couple of new reviews coming up in the next few weeks. Hope to see you then for those. Take care.